Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're going to get to the bottom of why your muscles aren't growing or aren't growing at the rate you want them to, within reason, of course. Now, with that said, if you feel like you're training hard, putting the effort in the gym, but still not seeing the muscle growth you're after and the results, then there's likely something you're missing. And it's not just one thing. There are three major areas that will determine if you actually build muscle from the time you're spending in the gym or if you'll just waste months in the gym spinning your wheels. Well, I don't know if I'd go as far as saying a waste, but no one likes to not make progress, or at least I'm not a big fan. So, first, we're going to go over your training because if you're not getting that right, then nothing else really matters. Then, your nutrition, and then lastly, we'll go over your recovery. So, when it comes to your training, we're going to break it down into three parts, starting with intensity. I want you to think about what we're trying to accomplish in the gym. We're trying to force an adaptation. Your body doesn't willingly just put on muscle, it needs a reason to do so. So, first and foremost, you must be training hard enough. And the easiest way to tell if you are is if you're taking most of your sets to the point that the last reps involuntarily slow down. So, you're trying as hard as possible to complete another rep, but it's just not moving. So, if you're doing bicep curls and you're going through and then the weight's still moving fast with relative ease, and then you just stop, call the set there, you are completely missing the mark when it comes to your training, and you will not be building anywhere near as much muscle as you could be because of it. Intensity is the easiest part to get nailed down because it's literally just effort. You're not worrying about learning proper technique or tempo. You're just going hard enough in your sets so that when you finish, it should take you a couple of breaths to get into a conversation. If you finish your set and right after you go, so yeah, bro, I'll just tell you a story about last weekend. You need to be training way harder if you expect to see any muscle growth. We need to be accumulating enough effective reps in the set. So with training within 3 reps in reserve, you need to be hitting that point. The last 5 to 6 reps of the set are what we call effective reps. So this is where we're recruiting high threshold motor units, generating a lot of mechanical tension, the biggest driver of hypertrophy. So if you're stopping your set before you even reach the effective reps, the last reps of the set, the ones that are close to failure, the reps that are stimulating muscle growth, you can't expect to see much results from your training. And it would be unreasonable to do so. It wouldn't make sense for your body to adapt if it has no reason to. So, step one, train really hard. The next part is technique and form. How you perform each exercise will dictate what you get out of it. Let me paint a picture for you. You have two people, let's say twins, like myself, I'm a twin, with the exact same genetics, they eat the same thing, identical recovery, sleep the exact same, and they have the same exact workout plan. One of them has great form and technique, and they build a shit ton of muscle. And the other one, doing the exact same program, but has terrible form and technique, doesn't control the reps, uses momentum, doesn't use a full range of motion, has no concept of tempo, puts no thought into the muscle they're trying to train, and they 3 6 months down the line build maybe a good bit of muscle, but compared to twin A, they look like they showed up half the time. So how do you make sure you're twin A? Two things: tempo and execution. When it comes to tempo, you want to spend 2 to 3 seconds during the eccentric, which is the lowering portion of the rep, the negative portion. You want to spend a second pausing in the stretch where your muscle is fully lengthened. So if you're doing a bicep curl, the eccentric would be slowing on the way down, and then the stretch would be where your arm is straight out, and then contract hard. So to nail your execution, we want to make sure we're going through a full range of motion. We want to make sure we're setting up correctly for each given exercise. For example, if you're doing a chest press, your chest is up, your shoulders are down, and we want to execute the movement to the best of our ability to get the most out of the muscles we are trying to train. For example, if we're trying to train our quads and we're doing a leg press, we want our feet lower on the platform and we're trying to get as much knee flexion or bend in the knee as we can to fully stretch the quad. If we're doing let's say an upper back row, like a T-bar row, we're trying to fully protract our scapula to fully stretch our upper back and then driving our elbows back and squeezing our upper back in the contraction. And each exercise will have a different setup and cues, but think, what muscle am I trying to train? Am I putting it through a full range of motion? And am I controlling that range of motion? If you tick those three, you're in a pretty damn good spot and will probably be training better than 90 plus percent of people in your gym, unless you go to some like bodybuilding gym like Pure Muscle or something like that. Okay, so now our intensity is high, our form and technique is on point. The third part of your training is your volume across the week for each muscle group. How many working sets, so the sets you're taking to failure or very close to failure, are you doing for each muscle group over the week? Now, this will be based on how many sets you can individually recover from, but as a bare minimum, 5 sets a week for a single body part, if you're training sufficiently hard, for most people seems to be sufficient. So if you're doing at least 5 hard sets, your volume is probably not where the issue lies if you're not seeing results. Now, people say around that 10 to 20 range, but to be honest, it's completely individualized. So it could be 8 for you, could be 12. You have to go and try to find out your number. Now, let's say you're following a bro split. Is 10 sets in one workout for that muscle group equal to 10 sets spread across 2 or 3 sessions? The answer is no. Training frequency matters as well. So training a muscle group at least 2 times a week will give you better results compared to 1 time a week. So at a bare minimum, if you're hitting a muscle group twice a week, you have nothing to worry about when it comes to frequency. If you're currently training the bro split or hitting a muscle group only once per week, then upping that to at least 2 will lead to more muscle growth. Next, is there a chance, not a big chance, but there is a chance you could be actually doing too much. So you're in a state of overtraining because you're under recovering. So if you feel fatigued all the time, if your strength is not increasing, maybe you're regressing, your motivation to train is way down, going to the gym, you're just going to the gym and doing more because you think you're not growing because you're not doing enough, is not the answer. Just honestly will dig you in an even bigger hole that you'll have to climb out of, and speaking from personal experience, does not end well. So a great example of this is when I got into lifting, just started, me and my 2 friends, we all got into lifting around the same time. Shout out to Emil and Jakey. We would sit in Jakey's basement, and no exaggeration, we would do 1,000 reps of bicep curls. We'd write down on a piece of paper 110 times, and then every time we hit 100 reps, we'd cross it off, and then go again and try to do another 100 reps, cross it off, and then again until we reached 1,000 reps of bicep curls. Now, we didn't always make it to that 1,000 rep, but we were so messed up in the head, we were at least doing 500 reps. Now, did I see any amount of bicep growth from that? Unfortunately, no, I did not. I probably exceeded my biceps maximal recoverable volume 100-fold. So it is possible, not to mention my sleep habits and nutrition habits were all over the place back then, but it is possible to be doing too much, and in some cases, scaling it back will actually lead to more muscle growth because you're training within your recovery capacity. And the easiest way to tell that you're training within your recovery capacity is just by tracking your training. If you're not able to progress or regressing and you're in a surplus, recovery is decent, then scaling back your volume would be a great decision. Now, given you're consistent, which means you follow a training plan, you're in the gym 3 to 6 times a week, you're not taking weeks off at a time, and you're applying all of what we just went through, then training, I can pretty much guarantee, is not your problem. But are you giving your body these 3 things when it comes to your nutrition? The first is a calorie surplus. Doesn't have to be a big one. In fact, it shouldn't be. Anywhere from gaining a rate of gain, which is how much body weight you want to gain per week, 0.25% to 0.5% of your body weight per week. If you're doing that, you're in a surplus. If your weight is maintaining week on week or going down, you're not in a surplus. And therefore, unless you're brand new to the gym or used to train but took a break and now you're back, then you're not really giving the body the excess of nutrients it needs to allocate towards muscle growth. Now, that's not to say you can't build muscle with maintenance, because there's been research that shows you can, and you can even build muscle in a deficit, but you won't be building as much muscle as you could be if you were in a very, very small surplus. Number 2 is your protein intake, the building blocks of muscle. If you're not at least eating 1 gram per pound of body weight, or if you're carrying a lot of excess fat, the 1 gram per pound of your ideal weight, or potentially lean body mass, then you're simply not giving your body the protein it needs to recover, repair, and then grow stronger. So, now that we established you're in a calorie surplus, very, very small one, you're eating sufficient amounts of protein. This isn't a necessity, but I wanted to throw this one in here just for those who really want to get the most out of training. Number 3 is the amount of carbohydrates you're eating. Carbs are what fuel your training, give you energy and fill up your glycogen stores in the muscle. So don't shy away from carbs. If you're not eating a ton, maybe you're dieting, then you still want to place the majority of your carbs in your pre, intra, and post workout meal to support your training performance as well as recovery. And that does lead me to the importance of recovery. Why is recovery important? Well, you're not building muscle necessarily during that 1 to 2 hours in the gym. You're building muscle when you're outside of the gym and when you're sleeping for the most part. So, I'm going to cover two things to make sure your recovery is at least sufficient. So, it's not going to be the limiting factor behind why you're not building muscle. The first is that you want to limit stress and be in what's called a parasympathetic state for the majority of your time outside of the gym. Your nervous system has two states: the parasympathetic, which is our rest and digest, and then our sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight or flight state, which is like tiger jumps out of you, adrenaline, pupils dilate, heart rate spikes. Now, we want to be in that rest and digest state as often as possible in order to recover, because when we're in our fight or flight state, our body thinks we're literally under attack. Like another tribe is coming to get us, or like I said, that tiger is running us down. Our pupils, like I said, they dilate, heart rate goes up, adrenaline hormones, cortisol go up, and our body has no business recovering from what we just did in the gym when it's in that state. So, obviously, if you have a stressful job, stressful circumstances, your recovery bucket will be less than someone who doesn't have a worry in the world, and a stress-free life. But that just means you have to taper down your training volume to accommodate for that. But in reality, most of us do encounter daily stress, so we just have to be intentional about being in that calm state whenever we really can. And we can do this simply by walking in nature. There is fantastic evidence that supports just getting outside induces more parasympathetic tone. Another thing you could do is guided breathing. Even if it's just like 5 minutes out of your day, you can go a pretty long way. Just 5 minutes of guided breath work. Then, obviously, if you are in a high stress state, maybe job, deep in a diet, there is supplementation that can come into play to help manage cortisol, like ashwagandha, KSM 66, Relora, it's one of my favorites. Rhodiola is great, and those definitely have a place as well. Now, what will play a massive role, arguably the biggest role, our number one recovery tool is sleep. If you're sitting there right now and you're getting 5 to 6 hours of sleep, you go to bed at, I don't know, 2, 3 in the morning, you sit looking at your phone before bed, you have caffeine in the evening, you may be getting enough sleep to function, barely, but I can't imagine you feel too good. But you're like taking a sledgehammer and just completely abolishing, I'm just going to make this number up, but like 70% of the gains you could be making. Not to mention the knock on effect it has on your health, immune system, energy, hormone status, which also will not help your ability to build muscle. So, what can we do to take our sleep in the right direction and get around at least 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep, restorative sleep? So, getting a good chunk of deep sleep and REM sleep. Well, I'm going to give you 5 very basic tools that will easily transform your sleep if you're not already doing them. The first, going to bed, waking up at the same time, at least 5, 6, ideally every night out of the week. Second, making your room like a bat cave, dark, cool, and quiet. Use blackout curtains and earplugs if you need to. The third is limiting blue light and overhead bright light in general, an hour to 2 hours before bed, because that will blunt melatonin production. The fourth is cutting off any caffeine around ideally 12 p.m., but 2 p.m. depends on how fast you metabolize caffeine, because it does have a half-life of 4 to 6 hours. So I personally like to cut mine off at 12. And the fifth is viewing morning sunlight within 10 to 20, 30 minutes upon wake. If you implement just those 5, you're doing yourself a massive favor, and you will not only start to build more muscle, but also start to feel fantastic throughout your day. And that is a wrap on today's podcast. Hopefully by now you were able to pinpoint what might be holding you back from your desired rate of muscle growth. If you found this podcast useful, or maybe it was the little nudge you needed to start taking your recovery or your nutrition or your training more seriously, I've got some more for you. There's a link in the description to sign up for my free 30-day email series. You'll get 30 valuable insights over 30 days delivered straight to your inbox. So go ahead, click that link, and let's get that transformation underway.